Hi everyone, Teddy Baldassarre here, joined by Kevin again. Kevin,
great to be here, Teddy, always.
Of course. So what we're going to be doing here with this session is looking at more independent, eclectic brands that maybe you're not as familiar with, potentially.
They're not on my radar screen because I don't want to collect them, or why?
Partially it's maybe production, partially it's potentially because you haven't looked at some of their designs because they are a little bit more out there. I'm just going to warn you now, these are not conventional types of brands in terms of their design style. And also they're expensive.
If they have interesting dials, that's good, because frankly there's been a breadth of new makers and not everybody is aware of this, and then certain retailers like Watches of Switzerland have really brought some of these European masterpieces over here, and that's why they've become collectible.
Now these are brands that now you could say many of them independents, especially with UNGP now being free from the Kering group to now operate. But these are, I think, a great expression of watchmaking. I'm all about individual expression when it comes to watchmaking, so I think all of these do this exceptionally well. So I'm going to go through each one of these different brands, get your reactions and just some thoughts.
And price point.
And we'll talk about price. The majority that we're looking on the table here is going to be, say, around $20,000 an hour.
I see some more expensive tourbillons.
Yes, there's some crazy things going on.
I mean, I don't even have to know what the brand is, and I know that these are going to be very high-end pieces.
Let's start off with something that is really crazy.
Okay.
Actually, more accurately, you should call it freakish, because this is known as the UN Freak, Ulysse Nardin's Freak. Let's take a quick step back. 2001, they released the Freak. The Freak was a huge development in watchmaking for a couple of reasons. One was its adoption of silicone as a material. So they use this in their escapement, their balance. There was really nobody else doing it. Now we see it across the board. It's become a standard material in the industry. But the other thing that's crazy about this watch is you look at it and you see this giant fixture of a gear train, you see this balance, there's no crown. This watch is crazy. It's a Freak. So how it works.
It's not the only watch without a crown. That is something that's creeping into horticulture now.
But the Freak was, when this was done, such a novel and different approach to watchmaking on so many different levels. So you're looking at this and like, all right, how does this work? Two things to look at. Now one, how do you set the time and where are the hands? If you look at it closely, you'll see this entire gear train here. And that's not only the movement, but that's also the minute hand. This entire fixture is the minute hand.
Let me have a look at that, Teddy.
Please. The hour hand
So you're saying this is significant from a horological perspective, because this was the first to do this.
So for one, the use of material is a first. Second, it's just the way that it's able to tell the time is also just remarkable.
I mean, either you love it or you don't. I mean, this kind of a dial is so extreme and always risky for a maker to put something like this out there. It's got to find its market, right? Mm-hmm. It obviously found its market.
It did find its market. You want to know how it works?
Yeah, I do. That's a very crazy timepiece.
So first off, if you want to set the time, what you do is you have this little flap here. You'll push it up.
It's a pusher, okay.
Okay, you do that and that will now engage. We have the ability now to set the time. So you have these little notches on the outside bezel here, and you can rotate.
What about the hour?
So the hour, do you see that arrow underneath there?
Yeah.
That little white arrow?
Yeah.
That's your hour. So if you look at the time here, we're like right, around 11, and I can just twist this.
Oh, so there's two ways to go.
So
I can do minute, I can do hour.
So hour is just going to be set with that minute hand. So you have to rotate around, yes.
Oh, so there's a lot of work.
There's some work. You would rotate it, and then, so you'd have to flip up that. If you flip up that little latch there, and now you can twist.
That's brilliant. That's really brilliant.
I was saying before we jumped into this, I didn't want to disclose anything else except I'm surprised you don't own something like this yet.
No, I don't yet. And it's sort of, it's, for me, when I get into these extreme pieces, I have to kind of fit them in. Where does it go for me? What am I doing with it? How am I using it? Remember, my collection spends a lot of its time on television.
Sure.
So it's about getting the wardrobe designers to get hip to it and say, because believe it or not, most of these things that I wear are controlled by the fashion designers that set these sets up. Mm-hmm. So I'm always looking to buy new pieces that they would approve, because I want to wear them on TV. That's the whole idea. That's why there's all these red bands everywhere, because that's part of the
Hey, look at that though, hey? Look at that red.
Obviously.
Then for winding the watch, you actually have to twist the case back. You press that, you add a little pressure, and then just twist it around, and
that's a lot of work. Wow.
There you go.
That's very cool. I mean, look, it is a freak. There's no question about it. But
Accurately named. One other thing I'll throw at you before we move on from UN is they also have, because this is a serious watch. You're talking about $68,000. So it's an expensive watch.
I'm surprised UN would do this because that's not really their heritage. Maybe they're just branching out a little bit.
So I think about UN, you have the marine chronometers. Yeah, you have the marine chronometers, and then you have, but in the 21st century, somebody asked me most revolutionary movements in the last 50 years. This was one of the ones I thought of. I really believe that.
And it's made in-house.
Correct.
So I always ask that because so many makers now are just relying on other movements.
And it's a game of semantics. This industry is all going to be borrowing certain components, specialized parts.
The springs, all that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But this is also another similar concept, except this has a crown. This is known as the Freak X. Same system in terms of a carousel. You have
traditional crown.
Traditional crown, though, so it's a lot easier to operate.
So do you think they expanded on the original concept? This is a far more interesting dial. There's a lot going on here, obviously.
So this is the more complicated one. You're talking about mid-20s for this, and then you're talking about 68,000 for that. So it's a substantial jump up. But this makes it a little bit more
What's the material
palatable.
of the case?
So that one is going to have a carbon fiber type of outer shell, and then inside you have titanium.
And here?
That one is going to be titanium DLC.
Well, a great discovery, Teddy, no question about it. Very eclectic. Yeah, I'm surprised from Nardin that they would go in this direction. But on the other hand, I'm very pleased. I love to see somebody experimenting. Horologically, I think you're going to get some controversy with this.
Of course. I mean, but they know that. That's why they call it the Freak.
Yeah.
Let's move on to another brand. Very similar in terms of, I'd say, some of their approaches, but also very different in others. If you look at Girard-Perregaux, you have now their contemporary collection. Many people think about the Laureato, which is
this
is a
brand
watch.
I know very, very well.
Swiss brand.
Yeah, base Swiss brand, been around forever, highly collected with Swiss collectors, but not so much appreciated in North America.
They're a little bit more out there with their designs, and I think this is a good representation of their classic watchmaking. This is their La Esmeralda Tourbillon. So this is the design format that has been in their archive for well over a century. They actually won an expedition in Paris in like 1889 for this design of this three-bridge layout.
One of the first to make the tourbillon popular.
There were certainly innovators. I mean, if you look back to the far
Although you have to admit, there's no need for tourbillon anymore.
Absolutely not. But this is really defined by, if you look at closely on those bridges, so you have one that's going to be fixated on the mainspring barrel, you have one that's going to be fixated on the central pinion for the hands.
I'm familiar with this piece.
Tourbillon. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's classic. I mean, it's and highly collectible.
It's a serious watch. They also do this very specific, really custom englage on those bridges. So if you look very closely on those bridges, you can see this polished edge.
Dial's beautiful. And I always concern myself with the secondary market. It's firmed up a little bit for these guys. That's what's happened.
For their Laureatos and things of that sort, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, some of these pieces are a tad more daring. So, the collector's market, you're a very specific type of collector if you're looking at this. But this is why I wanted to do a video like this, because this allows us to navigate into things that are a little outside the norm.
Well, I think that's important, but I always say about collectors, once you've got the standard pillars, the three horsemen, if you want to call it that, maybe you could adjourn to the fourth horseman, but it's obvious. It's Rolex, it's Patek Philippe. I mean, AP and FP Journe has now come up the feeding chain. I don't know if it's got that. It's only been around 24 years, so. But these guys, I've always had a lot of respect for them as watchmakers because of the heritage, and that's what matters. This is a beautiful piece. Very cool. Also not inexpensive.
No, it is not.
What's the price on it?
That one's right around $230,000. So
I thought a little bit more, actually.
$245 actually.
That's
on
right,
that one.
yeah.
Next we have the Cosmos, which we just shot. We shot an episode. I don't want to tease too much, but Kevin pulled this out of the case.
I did, because it really, really, really speaks to the sort of new modern generation of out there, crazy, yet complicated. It is a piece of art. That's what it is. It's an installation. That's what I would call that.
I totally agree with you. This watch, so you see this and you're like, what? This is craziness. So you have these two large spheres, one emulating the globe. Then you have another one that's going to be all the zodiac symbols. So this is almost like our relation to the stars through our planet. That's kind of what they're going at here.
There is a brand that probably has taken this even past the extreme, Jacob. This has a
the Astronomia type of, I understand, yeah.
The Jacob-esque look to it. And maybe you could say that he made that crossover from jewelry making to watchmaking. This comes from more of a heritage watchmaker, which may give it this is a very expensive piece. I'm well aware of it.
340,000 titanium case. Then you have this crazy dome sapphire crystal.
But again, I mean, it's a piece of art, and there's no crown on it, so.
So yeah, you have to grab these notches. I mean, you have to have fingernails to do it. Also,
It's complicated from that respect.
So then you'd have to.
Right.
That's how you wind it with a latch on the back, and then you'd have also all of these additional little latches here, which are going to operate each one of those independent functions. So you can actually kind of see if I rotate this, you can see that sphere moving.
If I think about where we are now in terms of watchmaking, the fact that this watch would be manufactured, put into the effort to market it, and actually get sold, which it is, tells you how broad and what breadth there is now into collecting pieces, because that would have never shown up 20 years ago. Never. Never, 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 never. It's so far off-piste that there's no way. But now you can pull it off.
I'm going to shift over to a new brand that I don't know if you are fully familiar with. So this is a brand known as Armin Strom. Now they are based in Biel, so Swiss-German town. Omega is also
not Geneva.
Not Geneva. So the founder, or at least the namesake of the brand, 20th century watchmaker, but this was actually really a brand started by two young gentlemen who would go to his watchmaking shop. Of this century, they started this brand. But they are making 98% of their components and their watches in-house. And they're making some remarkable pieces. Now this
have they been collected yet?
They're starting to pick up, and there's a reason why they're in this store. And I actually think that...
Well, let's hear that reason.
I think they have a unique design formula. And they also have very interesting price ranges.
Let's see the dial. Let me have a look at
So first, this is their...
This is two from the same.
Yes, two from the same. So I want to start with this one's a little more attainable now.
Got it.
Stainless steel version of this, you're talking about under $20,000. So this is actually
very collectible.
Most attainable watch on the table, but it's also from an engineering perspective, a pretty remarkable watch. So this is their gravity equal force. So you can see a couple things about this. Now, one thing they always do is they have more of the skeletonized approach. You have those three bridges on the right crown side. Then you also will have at the bottom of the dial this equal force barrel that's going to, so it has this Maltese cross inside that, barrel.
Yeah.
And what that's going to do
is that their logo?
So, well, actually what they're using that for is for the mainspring when it gradually unwinds. So the torque of the mainspring, when it is unwinding, there's a gradual decrease in let go of energy to the escapement.
This is a $20,000?
That one's going to be $27,000 because it's precious metal, but you can get the stainless steel version for, say, $17,000.
How many watches do they make a year?
They're making around 3,000, so it's not high production as well. Yeah. And most of their product is really, really well done. They have a unique design formula, but that constant force is a cool way to go around it.
I have to give you credit, Teddy, for discovering these kinds of brands because this is under the radar.
It's under the radar, but I think their stock's going to continue to go up. They're one that I remember seeing some of their pieces, and I'm like, all right, this brand has a lane.
Is this skeleton theme part of all their dials? If I look at the next one,
partially. I mean, that one really the thing that's going on there is that mainspring barrel, the equal force. It has this Maltese cross on the inside that allows that distribution of energy, so that the constant force is coming from that mainspring.
It is a striking dial. I agree with you. I think they've captured a certain modern-esque. There's even an element of journess to this, if you think about what they're doing, which has become very popular in the last 20 years. These smaller dials within the dial, which I'm trying to think who did that before Journe. Not many.
Yeah, you have to look back to old, pocket watches. Yeah. You have the open.
But now that he's blazed the trail, you're going to find. I'm not saying they've copied him in any way, but given my breadth in the Journe collection, this did look a bit like what I own already, but I like it.
It's an automatic, so you also have the little micro rotor that's hidden there.
I saw that.
So pretty cool.
And the next one, the steel version of exactly the same thing?
You're gonna freak out when I show you this.
Okay.
What do you know about resonance?
You're telling they built a resonance?
So they have their own. They're one of the only in the industry that are doing it.
That's really surprising.
One of the only in the industry that are doing it. I know you know this phenomenon well. I'm just going to explain it to people, though.
Sure.
So resonance is this idea in where you have
It's not an idea, it's proven physics.
It's a proven physics, where you have two independently vibrating objects next to one another. Their frequency are going to speak to one another, so they will gradually become in sync. You look at like a metronome as an example. Talk about radio frequency.
Right.
These are the type of examples people bring up.
It was not put into one wristwatch until F.P. Journe did it.
We call it technology. It's hundreds of years old.
It was in clocks.
Exactly.
It's in clocks, but obviously it's of great interest to people. It's fascinating, and it's a conversation stopper. I have not seen this version.
So you know, of course, you own the resonance
do.
from
I
FP
do.
Journe, so we of course will bring that up. But
Yeah.
this is a little bit different. So what this watch does, it does have 2 opposing balance wheels, but what they're doing in addition to that is they have this additional clutch spring, which connects to the overcoil, connects to both of the balances, and you can see it. It's oscillating back and forth, so it helps with making sure that that oscillation is going to be an equal. So you kind of see how that, it's almost like this prong that's coming out. It's going in and out, in and out. So it's
Very clever. Very, very clever.
The other thing about this watch as well is you're talking about $50,000.
Yeah, significantly cheaper. Yeah.
So if you're somebody that likes the design of this brand, you are fascinated with this idea of resonance, I mean, it's pretty damn cool. I mean, they are doing some crazy stuff. I mean, this is only 2 of their watches, but I am a big fan of what Armin Strom is doing.
But this, if I looked at the rest of their collection, if they're only making 3,000, there's probably 5 different directions you can go. I just guess, right?
Yeah, they do a lot of limited production product.
Yeah.
But they're always pushing the envelope. They also came out with something called the Orbit, which has a column wheel date function that just bounces around. It's pretty cool.
No,
So
I always
they're
I tell makers like this something to think about when you're approaching collectors like me. I don't consider I'm a collector of any one maison or brand unless I have 3 pieces, and I want them to be different. So when you really stake out, you've got to have at least 3 to 5. Otherwise, a one of is not how you collect. You kind of get behind the brand, get to know the maker, decide the path you're going to take. And so when I get approached, I remember when I started my initial discussions with Journe we've been talking about, I said, look, I need 4 pieces right out of the gate, which they'd never ever done with anybody before. I was the first to buy 4 at once because I wanted to get into their society.
And this is before the craze too.
Before the craze too. I was very fortunate, but this is the same for me. I mean, this is the kind of thing, well, can you take me in 3 different directions so that when I put it into the collection, you can see the ebb and flow of design. That's what makes great makers.
The other thing that's great about this brand is because they manage so much part of their manufacturing process, if you had a specific request about like a dial color or something very...
They'll do it.
They'll do it.
And dials are tough to modify.
Yes.
I mean, it's I'm very fortunate to have a few one-of-a-kinds made for me, but I know how difficult that is. It's not so easy. Very interesting, Teddy, you brought these guys up because this is the kind of thing they need, a little exposure. They're clearly dedicated to the craft.
Yes. Let's move on to Speake-Marin. So you know about this brand.
I do.
So
in fact, it was
recent
Watches of
purchase.
Switzerland through a good friend of mine that introduced me to the Tutti Frutti. I fell in love with it. I wanted to see it in person first because it's very eclectic on its dial. It's got granularity to it. It almost looks like a piece of slate. But it's been and I was able to get it through Watches of Switzerland, thank you. There's only like 10 of them.
Yeah.
And it's a big part of my collection, and people love it. They just go nuts when they see that thing. It's always, what is it? It looks hand-painted, because it is.
Very limited production on these guys. So let's start with a couple limited edition pieces. So these are their dual time watches in their kind of traditional Piccadilly case, which is very similar to what you have.
Yeah. Very popular. Piccadilly case, very popular.
Yeah, and then you see other brands doing this. They have like kind of this bolted lug design. It's very defining. You have this large onion style crown. Now these are exclusive for the retailer they're at right now, Watches of Switzerland. They have 2 different dial colors available at 10 pieces.
And let's talk about that. That's when a watch retailer gets behind a brand where they form a symbiotic relationship, and it's very important because this really supports new, young, more aggressive companies. They need distribution. They need showcasing like this, where we're at. Watch buying is really about the experience of being in an environment where you can explore it, and they've got a fantastic facility here.
Titanium cases.
Yeah.
Dual time function. You have this more like salmon effect, and you have that blue, which does pop as well.
Blue's very popular these days.
You have, so what you do is you can pull out to the far position. You would set your 24-hour time at that far left part of the dial, and then you could pull to the second position, and that will allow you to isolate that independent hour hand to set your local time. So pretty conventional. You also have the retrograde date at the top right portion of the dial, which can be quick set also with the pusher on the...
The good news for these guys is the big boys are collecting.
Yeps.
That's what's happened. And you do need that to happen for a brand. You need the big boys to step in. And that's because in most cases they believe there's a solid secondary market 7-10 years out. That's how it works. I mean, it's...
Very low production. I mean, these are limited to 10 pieces each.
Yeah.
So
as was mine. I mean, these are gorgeous. There's no question about it. Price point?
That one is going to be right around 35, I believe.
They're both around there.
Yeah.
All right.
Then last one on the table. So this is Speake-Marin's approach to an integrated style watch in terms of sports. We of course know where that's going from, but this is known as the Ripples. And you can kind of see why with their ripple dial.
Well, I think they've achieved something here. It's both dress and sport. They've really done that well. It's a beautiful, beautiful casing.
Alternating kind of this finish on the dial that allows that kind of rippling effect. When you see it in person, you have to get it under the light and it just pops.
Yeah, it is gorgeous. It's got a lot of elements of style in here. A beautiful bracelet.
And you're right around right under $20,000 for that.
Yeah, is this also very limited production, right?
Everything they do. I mean, I believe this brand. I mean,
I think this is more than 10, though.
Yeah, I believe so.
This is more than 10 because it should be. I mean, it's a good production watch for them.
Stainless steel, nice finish case. You can see those facets on the different case sides.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, these are great, great pieces.
Yeah, these are aspirational pieces,
Yeah.
and how I see it too is watches keep you very interested because there's something for everybody. And these are the type of brands, if you want to get off the beaten path, you want to find something that's not the traditional Rolex, Patek, but you want something that has kind of a bespoke experience, which from a lot of these major brands, sometimes you don't get that anymore. This is where you can almost interact directly with some of these makers. They're more out there with their
Very
designs.
often, the more successful you are, the less risk you want to take. I mean, I think about the extreme pressure Patek was under with the 5711 when they finally had to cut it off. It's the only watch anybody wanted. I mean, it was nuts. The steel for about 7 or 8 years, and it exploded in value afterwards. But I think the makers got tired of just doing that. They wanted to explore other ideas. These are where you can go once you've achieved enough of those verticals, and they are beautiful.
Before we close,
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what watch on the table impressed you the most, or which one was the one that struck out the most?
This one, the production watch. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's a beautiful design. It really is. And these are all fantastic, but you know, you have to think about where it fits with you and where you could wear it. This is for everything. This is sporty, it's a dress watch, it's striking, it's beautiful, it does well in the light. Look, these are great pieces, but again, I have to look at it in the context of my own collection. I've got a lot of crazy pieces, with a lot of crazy things going on. And every once in a while, you want the fresh breeze of just a beautiful watch, and that's what this is.
Surprised me.
Yeah. Not about the money, Teddy, it's about
That's
the
true.
dial.
That is true.
It's about the dial.
That's true. Famous words to live by.
Yeah.
All right, guys, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell icon. That's a great indicator as well for us. If you want us to do more of these types of brands, seeing that encouragement really does help us out if you want to do more of this in the future. Guys, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all next time.
Look, I teach Teddy something every time we get together. Grasshopper.